Well, I guess we should get started. There may be some people filtering in, and we will allow that. It's nice to see everybody in such nice surroundings, spacious surroundings. Here we are in the director's conference room to welcome our special visitor, who is going to be our keynote speaker at our annual aging conference tomorrow, Dr. Tom Perls from Boston University. And it's a special pleasure for us to host him to give this very special edition of Geriatrics and Gerontology Grand Rounds. So thank you all for coming. Those of you who come every week and crowd into our digs upstairs, thanks for coming today. And those of you we don't see every week, thank you especially. Dr. Perls, as many of you know, is renowned for these magnificent studies that he's done as a founding director of the Centenarian study, the New England Centenarian study, one of several extremely important studies internationally to study what is special about the health and longevity of centenarians and their families. And we'll hear more about that tomorrow. So that being his primary interest, I think it's especially deserving of a keynote address tomorrow. Those of you who haven't registered and do want to register, please do so through our rec office for tomorrow's talks. Dr. Perls, I'm going to guess he's from California originally, but I haven't talked with him enough to know for sure. But I know he did his undergraduate training at one of the Claremont colleges. Right. And so I will ask him later.
I was born in California,
okay.
So very good.
Great. So Los Angeles?
Los Altos Hills, California,
which
near
is
Stanford.
Oh, Los Altos, sure. Okay, well, after that he became an Easterner, and I think although he's been buffeted about from one coast to another, he went to medical school at Rochester, and then did some of his training at Harbor General in Los Angeles, a great place, and then went back for fellowship training after a around the world stint in geriatrics training at Melbourne, and then completed a fellowship at Harvard, started his faculty work there, and went over to BU where he is at this point. So we're delighted to have him here to talk about one of his favorite topics about quackery and anti-aging medicine, which I think is a great topic about which I want to know more personally. I have to introduce one of our colleagues from employee education, Sharon Sutton, as a prelude to this talk, because as many of you know who've been filling out these forms over the past months, we are getting our continuing education through the VA. And
thanks very much, Michael. I was asked, as you know, to come and give this talk tomorrow, the keynote, and was asked, well, maybe I'd like to give another talk, so I'm not, for you guys who are coming tomorrow, you won't hear the same thing twice. Because it's, there's going to be a bigger audience and a bunch of people from the community, I will be compelled to give a shortened version of this attached to my talk, at which point you're all welcome to get up and leave en masse. Maybe it'll look like some big protest, which would be great. But I thought I'd talk about anti-aging quackery now. Why am I interested in this? So I've been studying exceptional longevity now since the early 90s and centenarians, and to my dismay was finding myself quoted more and more by these individuals who were saying that they could stop and reverse aging. And at the time, though admittedly I think I'm seeing it less, they were portraying old people in just horrendous ways, basically saying that aging was sitting in a wheelchair with a nursing home gown on, staring at walls, and really to scare the hell out of people, and then say, oh, by the way, we can stop and reverse aging. So I think primarily more out of my love for older people, and this really just horrific view of old people that they were promoting, that I was quickly viewing anti-aging as anti-old people. And it was really from there that I got started and started to follow these people a bit and look at what they were doing. And have seen it, to my dismay, to do nothing but just grow by leaps and bounds. So I'm probably one of the most outspoken critics of the industry. It's gotten me into quite a bit of trouble, unfortunately, to the dismay of my wife. But the last lawsuit was dismissed, so fortunately I'm out of that one. But anyway, I think it's very important, and it's one of the reasons I give these talks.
Actually, could
So-
you, before you get done, could you describe what happened with the industry that got you in trouble with them?
To a certain degree I can, to a certain degree for another 6 months I can't.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
So these are pictures of centenarians. In the middle is a centenarian and their kid. The guy on the right is not a centenarian, the guy on the left is. These are, as with everything, there's a broad spectrum in terms of the people in this industry. And to the far extreme, you'll have individuals saying that they have the secrets to stopping and reversing aging, and if you give them enough money, they'll be happy to help you live to 150 or 200 years old, and to be in great shape. I think one of the very important things for people to realize is just how difficult and how rare it is to get to even just 100 in relatively good shape. Most of us pass away in our late 70s, early 80s. In terms of average life expectancy, I think most of us should be able to get to our mid to late 80s in relatively good health. A good study that I like to quote often is the Seventh-day Adventist Health Study. And there, the average life expectancy of the individuals who practice that religion is 88 years. It's practically the highest average life expectancy in the country. And it's probably by virtue of their health-related behaviors that are dictated by their religion. So they're vegetarian, they don't smoke, they don't drink, they regularly exercise, they tend to be lean, and they do spend quite a bit of time devoted to family and religion, which may translate into enhanced ability to manage their stress well. So, and there aren't any particular ethnicity or geographic location. For me, it would mean that the vast majority of the variation of people being able to live to their mid to late 80s in relatively good health is related to these health-related behaviors. Now, to then go beyond those, and remember that is 28, almost 30 years beyond the age of 60. And the Seventh-day Adventist Health Study has shown that these individuals really are compressing the time that they're experiencing disability towards really the very near end of their lives. So in response to this notion of the older you get, the sicker you get, both the centenarians, which I'll talk about tomorrow, who incur disability really not until their early to mid 90s, and the Seventh-day Adventist Health Study indicate to me that it's more the case of the older you get, the healthier you've been. So healthy behaviors translate into adding healthy years to one's life rather than, oh, what's the use of adding more years to my life if I'm going to have disability and so on, which I think is a rather pessimistic and unrealistic point of view. But to live these 20 years, well, 15 years beyond what the average bunch of us should be capable of doing, well, that's what I research. And there are, unfortunately, some individuals out there who say they already know those answers and that they can easily get you there, just give them the bucks. Some well-known myths. Back in the 1970s, we saw some Dannon yogurt commercials of people living to 120, 130 years old, having many children in their 80s, 90s. Maybe they've been through their second and third spouses, and maybe they're married to one. But the Shangri-Las, which tend to be these mountainous regions. I think there's a very, probably the first one is in the Hunza region in the Pakistani-Chinese border area. This was a quote from a Time magazine article. Sherali Mislamov, 168, a Caucasian herdsman, regarded in the Soviet Union as the oldest man alive. He had died in Barzavu, USSR. Mislamov, who neither smoked nor drank and existed largely on a diet of chicken broth, cheese, and curded milk, is survived by his 107-year-old third wife and 219 other family members, including a 100-year-old grandchild. Well, about every 2 years, there's an article that shows up in the New York Times or the Boston Globe about another Armenian who died at the age of 120, and I dutifully send in my little letter to the editor saying that's a crock of wool. This is, again, more the fascination that's been around for hundreds of years probably about mortality and how old people can live to be. And while people are fascinated with longevity, at the same time in this country we're seeing more and more disturbing trends that are going to be interfering with people's ability to live to older age. People are exercising less, people are sitting on the couch pushing their TV zappers, food portions are much larger, a lot more people are eating junk food, kids spend more time in front of the screens and less time being physically active, we snack more, we sleep less. We have lots of gadgets that do everything for us, and we're driving more and walking less. And again, I really push the fact that I think that the fountain of aging well, I hate the term fountain of youth, I hate the term anti-aging for the reasons I've already talked about, but we already know the fountain of aging well, which I think is these healthy behaviors I've spoken of. But there are various different terms. Anti-aging is becoming a less frequent term. You're now seeing terms like life extension, age management. But again, they promote this very inaccurate, scary, pessimistic view of aging. And then they say that they've got the answer. Life Extension magazine is a magazine that tries to look like a medical journal, and some of you may even get this thing. And they put some articles in there that even look like scientific articles, but they're far from it. And lots of advertisements for fountain of youth schemes and so on. Now, what is a quack? In the U.S. Congressional Report Quackery, a $10 billion scandal, a quack is defined as anyone who promotes medical schemes or remedies known to be false or that are unproven for a profit. And as I'll show you, there are a huge amount of people out there that actually meet this definition. So if you put the term anti-aging and HGH, which is human growth hormone, into Google, you get 1,500,000 hits. Is it the president?
Only if it's the red phone.
That's your lawyer.
Anti-aging Quackery Central. Can I help you? Emergency, my God. I hope not. Is that a test?
President,
Probably.
President Motley.
I do consider this an emergency, actually. Somebody who I really can't talk about came up with the term HGH because of this little settlement that got me out of a big $250 million lawsuit. It's growth hormone, and to me it's really the most, what happens is that I think society in general is very interested in hormones. They equate just the word hormone with youth. And it really is a favorite of the anti-aging industry as a result in terms of marketing. And you know, in the most recent past it was melatonin, then it was DHEA, dihydroepiandrosterone, and now it's HGH. And of course we've heard a lot about growth hormone in the athletic and sports arena, and people are thinking, well, these guys are bulking up and they're doing so great on growth hormone. They get in trouble, but why don't I just take it and see if it can help me bulk up and so on. And I'm going to talk a lot about why that's a lot of nonsense. And there may be some things that the athletes are doing that are helping them bulk up other than growth hormone, but then there's some potentially pretty significant risks to them as well. There's a lot of other things out there besides growth hormone. There are lots of pills and sprays and creams. All Immune is just an example, an advanced glutathione stimulation, which strengthens your defense system, enhances your energy levels, supports your body during periods of stress, detoxifies your body, neutralizes free radicals, and fights aging. I mean, these are all panaceas. It costs $50 a bottle. And really, so much of this is just, you'll see testimonials. There's very little in terms of, and they're probably, paid people. What's really funny is that you'll see testimonials for different products, the exact same face, the exact same verbiage, showing up in all kinds of different websites. But it just, and you have no idea what's in this bottle. It could be grass seed, it could be sand, but that's another big problem. And I just grabbed it. I wasn't paying any attention really to any particular product. Here is Extend Life. I don't know if there's a price on here, but I mean usually it's going to be $50–60 for a bottle of pills. And it has, and it says that they're going to advance your life expectancy and so on. Here's a free radicals test that you can get in the mail. Probably tells you that you have very high levels, and here's the next thing to take care of that. So why is this such a big deal these days? The quacks are flocking. Well, first we've got the baby boom population, 75 million guys and women who are looking at the aging of their parents, and they're starting to look at the aging themselves, and they want some answers. They want to know, my God, in this world of medical miracles every day, these people who are claiming that they can stop and reverse aging, there really must be something to that. And now, they got a lot of money, and they've got all this stuff on the internet, which is the other issue, because there's all this unbridled marketing and data supposedly that people can look at, and really there's very little in the way of any good information out there telling people that this is just all a crock of bull. I have a website, antiagingquackery.com, which you can go to. There's another one called quackwatch.com, but it really is far and few between. Then there is this 1994 U.S. congressional passage of DSHEA, the Dietary Supplements Health and Education Act. And what this allowed, and it was kind of passed in the dead of night with a huge amount of lobbying, but it was supposedly, the public should have access to a bunch of stuff without a prescription. We don't want to make an undue hindrance in their access to this stuff. But what has happened is that it's a giant, huge loophole for various companies and so on to just put anything they damn well please on our market shelves without they can make all kinds of claims. They just can't make health-related claims. They can't say this cures your asthma, okay? But they can say it enhances your life expectancy. It enhances your brain function. It improves your sex life. It makes you look young. All this stuff. But aside from some rules about any claims of health function, which they break those too, they don't have to show efficacy to anyone. They don't have to show adverse events that might be reported to them to anyone. They don't have to show any safety at all. I mean, and they don't have to prove to you that what's in the bottle is what they've put on the label. It's really horrendous. Here's a website, the American Pharmacy, Inc., the American Pharmacy, HGH.com, and on their site they say human growth hormone replacement therapy is probably the single healthiest thing you can do for your body. Now it turns out if you go to it's a network solutions, it's a website that you can look up who is behind the website. It tells you the registrant. And the American Pharmacy is a little outfit in Cancun, Mexico. And my guess is this guy here, they found off the beach and put a white coat and stethoscope and gave him a clipboard. And this is really kind of the nonsense that happens. And they will sell you injectable growth hormone that probably comes from China, and who knows what's in there. But this is a little bit of what we're dealing with. And here's just the...
Probably from China.
Huh?
Why you say?
China particularly has been a source of counterfeit growth hormone. On the other hand, you're really good to mention that, because many of these websites just sell you the growth hormone from Sazin and from Genotrope and Lilly and Humatrope and so on. So you're right. But the counterfeit drugs are also a problem on these websites. I think I mentioned that in particularly just to say there's a lot to worry about from these sites. This is just a smattering of the kind of stuff you see on these websites. You see some spray, some pills, money-back guarantees, lots of good-looking, thin, very virile-looking folks. These scientific-looking folks looking at test tubes and computers, and maybe some citations of some articles that are completely misconstrued. Most famously, there was a New England Journal of Medicine article around 1990 indicating that they did a growth hormone trial of about 12 old, frail men. And somehow, some way, the sentence ended up in the article saying, administration of growth hormone in this 6-month trial reversed the aging of these individuals by 20 years. And thus was born the growth hormone industry and basically the anti-aging industry as we know it. Now, the New England Journal has done some unprecedented things, like they put the article up for everybody to see, and then they have a couple of editorials by Jeff Drazen and Vance, who have said that this has been completely misconstrued. We're so sorry this ever happened, blah, 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 blah. But the horse is out of the barn. And many of the sites just are peppered with testimonials. And because there really is, there's no proof. They can't show you proof. So it's testimonials. I have an article in the Journal of Gerontology and on the website listed 15 kind of major red flags about anti-aging and quackery. And these include the claim is pitched directly to the media without evidence of unbiased peer review. Now, a very famous place where this happened was when not with anti-aging, but when the Relians, this cult that is thinking about how they were going to be visited by some creatures from another planet, claimed that they were involved in experiments where, in Italy I think it was, they cloned a baby. And so they came to the media and said, we have successfully cloned a baby, and we're going to give the DNA to somebody. And well, it all turned out to be nonsense. But lo and behold, suddenly we had a president who decided that therapeutic cloning and the whole science of stem cell research was to be put on hold. And we all know what kind of roadblocks that led to in terms of the pursuit of good science. So there can be all kinds of dangers there. The purveyor's work or message is being suppressed by the scientific establishment. I've seen these folks claim that they're modern day Galileos, and people like me are the Inquisition, and we're just jealous. They use phrases like scientific breakthrough, exclusive product, secret ingredient, or ancient remedy. I think if you start seeing terms like that, maybe a light bulb should be going off. Lots of testimonials and anecdotes, like I've said. Centuries-old remedies had been used in traditional medicine for thousands of years. Peoples of the Andes have drunk from Andean glacial milk for thousands of years, and they have unusually high life expectancies, this kind of thing. You'll see them often, there are instances, including some people very big in the industry using MDs after their names who had no business doing so. So you see lots of attempts at blending false senses of credibility to sell their product. I'm not going to go through all of these. Lots of disclaimers, money-back guarantees, we're on your side. Probably the biggest red flag is that the products are sold. Now, QuackWatch is a really expansive website with thousands of instances of quackery. The area of anti-aging is just one, but it's kind of an interesting, fun website to look at if you want to. Now, what's going on in Texas? The Texas Medical Board, in April 13th, 2007, decided that this guy, Ted, was saying that he was certified member of the American Board of in anti-aging medicine. And Texas, interestingly, among the medical boards throughout the United States, has probably been the most vigorous and active in nailing people for saying that they are board certified in something that the Board of Medical Specialties has nothing to do with. I mean, you can hang a shingle out saying you're board certified in anything. Well, one of the things that, or you're not supposed to, is anti-aging medicine. That is just part of the whole hucksterism game. So he was recently hit. This Tiny Point Pharmacy in Houston lists Ted as one of the practitioners that they encourage you to go to because they do all this compounding of bio-identical hormones, which is all a bunch of, where they say, well, we put tofu or whatever into something and you're going to get a big estrogen effect or whatever, but it's all unproven hucksterism. And what about in San Antonio? August 21st, how about that for an up-to-date slide? Okay. Philip Shijak, here's a nice picture of him with his babes. And he has a place here called Genesis Medical Spa. And he got nailed by the medical board. What does it say here? It was assessed a penalty of $500. He probably makes $500 in an hour, easily in an hour. He operates the Genesis Medical Spa in San Antonio, Texas, advertising that in addition to being board certified, he was trained and certified by the Centenarian Institute in the field of age management medicine. The site also defined age management medicine as a proactive approach that utilizes hormone modulation and nutritional supplement to help prevent disease and minimize the effects of aging. Right down, I don't know where that is, but maybe it's nearby. Centenarians is this big outfit in Vegas that now has a clinic in South Korea and Tokyo. I think they tried to get one in Miami. It was started by a guy named Alan Mintz, who was a radiologist. And he was a self-professed growth hormone user. He was getting acromegalic from what I could tell. I mean, he just was getting a big jaw, and he didn't look too good to me. The Centenarians, so sadly, I must say, he died June 3rd of this year, and probably from a brain tumor. And he was always quick to say that cancer was not a risk for growth hormone. And Centenarians has really clamped down on this and has done they're very darndest to try and keep this a secret, but I think it'll be coming out pretty soon. But here you've got one of the henchmen in the anti-aging industry dying from the very thing he said that couldn't happen. And I'm hoping that's going to make have a big effect on this particular industry. But growth hormone is going to go away and then it'll be replaced by something else. I'm just very concerned that growth hormone in particular can be just the tip of an iceberg in terms of some real potential dangers in terms of cancer. So here are some ads for growth hormone. It'll decrease your body fat by 82%, reduce your wrinkles by 61%, increase your energy level by 84%, your sexual potency by 75%, your memory by 62%, your muscle strength by 88%. Proven by the New England Journal of Medicine, as seen on NBC, CBS, CNN, and even Oprah. And here's some pills. Now, the thing here is, here's a bottle of HGH that costs about $250. It's a spray, it's a sublingual spray. But growth hormone, if there was any in here, is far too large of a molecule to pass through your mucous membranes into your system. So you might as well just be spraying water under your tongue. The other thing is the pills. There's no way eating a capsule of growth hormone is going to enter in your system either. So that's just pure scam. The dangerous stuff here is this quick pen, where you just have the pre-filled pen with growth hormone and you just jab it into your thigh. Now, the state attorney in New York recently went after a pharmacy in Florida called Signature Pharmacy, not because growth hormone for anti-aging is illegal, which I'll get into, but because there were no physicians supervising the administration of the stuff over time. There's some adverse effects associated with growth hormone. There was an article in JAMA a few years ago by Blackburn and Mitch Harmon and others, where they did a trial looking at growth hormone and found that up to 50% of the people taking it were experiencing a range of side effects. The diabetes, about 15% of these individuals go on to develop irreversible diabetes. But to me, probably the biggest concern, oh, and then there's Andre Bartke, who has shown with mouse studies, and there's others who have shown this too, that that mice who are deficient in growth hormone, who have a receptor that doesn't recognize growth hormone, and you get these dwarf mice, actually live quite a bit longer. So the growth hormone deficiency leads to higher life expectancy, not lower, the opposite of what these people claim. And then there's other studies showing that administration of growth hormone shortens lifespan and increases cancer risk in these animals. So never mind what it scientifically shows. Again, it's the message that counts. And never mind that it has this potential risk. I mean, it's just one of the most unethical things I can imagine going on. And here we have a woman, cancer took the life of a noted user of growth hormone. It was a very aggressive case, but you just don't hear about the cases, and we're actually thinking of getting into some cancer registries and seeing if we can send around some questionnaires and see if there was some use of growth hormone associated with certain cancers. I think the biggest thing will be what comes out about Alan Mintz. We had an article in JAMA a couple of years ago now, provision of distribution of growth hormone for anti-aging, clinical and legal issues. And in the article, we make the case that there actually, growth hormone is almost a Schedule III drug. Not quite, but it almost is, because the language in the law indicates that you can only give growth hormone for certain uses. And so that those uses are something called adult growth hormone deficiency syndrome, AIDS wasting syndrome, and a short bowel syndrome. But the adult growth hormone deficiency syndrome is the one that is of big interest. Now, the promoters of growth hormone for anti-aging say growth hormone levels drop with aging, and so therefore it's that drop in growth hormone that causes aging. So if you just replenish it back to normal levels, you're okay. Well, since this article came out, they've said, oh, we're not doing anything illegal because we're treating growth hormone deficiency in adults. But what they don't pay attention to the fact is there's making the definition of growth hormone deficiency syndrome, you have to do a positive stimulation test, that is, you give a drug like growth hormone stimulating hormone, and they have to have an adequate response to that, and if they don't, well, that's part of it, and then you have to have some pathological reason for the deficiency, and that would usually be a tumor of the anterior pituitary gland. It's very rare. And then they say, oh, we measure IGF-1 levels. That's just not cutting it. They're kind of scrambling around this. What's the latest? Sorry to say something about China again, but here is where they're promoting They get your stem cells and they re-inject them into you. I think Madonna is into this recently, with sheep stem cells. But it's these rejuvenate injections, if that's what they're giving. So that's the end of my talk. A lot of it harped on growth hormone, but it's really just the growth hormone sales in this country for anti-aging approach $600 million a year. And the vast majority of those who are doing it are those in their 40s and 50s. And so it's not the kids with short stature getting the growth hormone. So that's the wake-up call, and I'll be happy to entertain some questions. Thanks.
What's happening in the rest of the world? Are other countries addressing this more aggressively than what we're doing?
Oh, very much so. There's some very stringent laws in other countries, such as England and France. Not so much in Germany yet. It's unheard of in many countries, but in the United States, it's just crazy. I think it's growing slowly in some of the countries like Germany.
Well, I'm sitting next to the newly elected president of the Gerontological Society of America, and we have representatives of AGS in here as well, and I'm wondering what the role of professional societies is in this area.
So back in the mid-90s, the GSA, which I'm a member, hopefully going to be on the editorial board, or am, and on the editorial board of AGS already, but the GSA newsletter would get some ads from the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. I didn't mention their name. And I would write in and I said, what are you doing allowing these people to put ads? And no, it's freedom of speech and what have you. But it didn't take very long for those ads to disappear. J.L. Chansky, a demographer at the University of Illinois Chicago, and I have had a number of symposia at both of the AGS and the GSA on this subject. This November, Jay and I at the GSA have a symposium on the use of the legal system to keep people like us quiet. And so certainly having a forum in which we can talk about these things, I think, is very important. I would love to see position statements. I think that would be good, and I think it's time. I think that, as particularly with the baby boom population, really seriously going after this stuff with a lot of money, we really, as public health individuals, need to come out with some strong statements about these folks.
You know, a couple of years ago, the American Medical Association came out with a statement for the first time in its 100-some-odd-year existence, saying that the diets of Americans were now so poor that they finally were going to recommend that people actually take multiple vitamins. And here they're recommending multiple vitamins when there's
no
only
proof that
one vitamin, multiple vitamins in the PDR, and all the rest of them, you know, you don't know what you're getting.
And recently, I think there was an article in a high-tier journal, was it New England Journal or JAMA, not really certain that multivitamins are of any use to anyone. So, you know, and I just saw Sicko. I'm not too fond of I revoked my AMA membership because I didn't really like the AMA's position on any criticism of the medical establishment with regard to potentiate for prolonging what we have in this country. But anyway, I'm not outspoken.
But it would be nice to see some position statements on some of these things.
I mean, I've been pretty
particularly
dismayed at the lack of action by the FDA and the DEA with regard to this whole industry. And it's been rather, and I know there's lobbying and money behind it for sure, but you know, it's very slow in happening. So these kind of activities would be wonderful. I'm so glad I get to bend your ear.
My understanding internationally, it's a $30 trillion industry.
Well, when you start bringing in anti-wrinkle creams and the Botox and everything else, for sure, then it goes way up real fast. And there's no indication that the creams do anything except that moisturizers otherwise would do. It's just a lot of wonderful marketing.
May I, oh, go ahead if there's
Dan.
another question.
I was just, I really admire you tackling this so outspokenly, but quackery comes in a whole lot of shades of gray. I'm wondering what you think of milder things like the Alzheimer's Association's Maintain Your Brain program. I mean, do you think that basically this filters all the way down to basically unsubstantiated medical claims that certain things are going to prevent the effects of aging that maybe we all advocate without empirical data?
I think for me, it'd be nice to kind of stick to that Senate definition of quackery. And certainly, you know, what I think you make your best guess. I mean, there were a whole lot of physicians who were giving estrogen to decrease osteoporosis and heart risk for postmenopausal women, and look where that got us. Was that quackery? No, but it might have been jumping the gun a little bit without the appropriate data to go behind doing something like that. I'm very outspoken about some of these things, particularly where I see significant danger and just really pure hucksterism and quackery. That's why I harp a lot on growth hormone. Does that mean there's no role for growth hormone in the future with regard to looking at various problems associated with aging? By no means. I think there's a real role for researching that and doing good science. But until it's with scientific rigor shown to be helpful, I'm going to be really outspoken about it, because...
That's another thing I want to ask you. Do you know of an adequately powered clinical trial that shows that growth hormone doesn't help signs of aging?
Well, remember, we don't have good biomarkers. So to do a good short-term study, if your endpoint is longevity, we got to wait a while. I think that there's so much evidence in terms of animal models and in terms of side effects that have been seen in older people, and the lack of any evidence to date that it is helpful just speaks volumes about the quackery and hucksterism in this particular case.
What you say about AIDS, that it's indicated for age-related
Wasting.
Wasting, right. Made me wonder whether anybody's tried it in terminal decline, say in Alzheimer's disease. Nursing home residents that are going into this very short.
Well, here's the key, here's the trick on that one. They would probably jump in the gun on growth hormone for AIDS. Very few specialists in AIDS give growth hormone for wasting syndrome. There have been far too many side effects, it's too expensive, it doesn't really help. So I think you would be very hard-pressed to find any AIDS specialist now who would provide growth hormone for that indication. That was just something that showed up by the Secretary of Health and Human Services early on, and they've just never taken it off.
Adolescent that receive growth hormone for short stature will develop, is on risk for developing cancer later after the treatment, you know, the midterm, something like that?
So there hasn't been any evidence of some really significant untoward effects among the population getting growth hormone for short stature before their epiphyseal plates close. And then there are a very rare few, this adult growth hormone deficiency syndrome, about 3 out of 10,000 in the population that continue to get growth hormone after their bone plates have closed. These are, again, these individuals who've had this damage to their anterior pituitary gland, either through cancer or radiation therapy or something like that. And so that's a really rare sample. Supposedly, these people aren't making much of any growth hormone. So giving them just the minimal amount to be physiologic may not be at high enough of a level to cause a problem, but I don't know. I don't think the data's out there.
I seem to recall there was a move to provide patients in ICUs and acutely ill settings with growth hormone, patients of different ages, and that was, as I remember, you can tell us, that was a clear situation in which growth hormone had an adverse.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
Except in children, I think there
I
was
don't
a
know.
study where it may have helped some children.
I think I know that article. I think it was in the Annals of Internal Medicine, and that indeed was the case.
Yeah, Centenarian studies, those long-lived people have higher HGH levels or
In which
receptors
studies?
in your Centenarian.
Oh, the Centenarians. We haven't measured. It's hard to measure growth hormone. There is a new ELISA test, I guess. We just haven't. As I'll talk about a little bit tomorrow, with centenarians, the only ones that you'd really want to do that on are the really vigorous, healthy ones. Though there are centenarians who are many centenarians are near the very end of their lives. They've entered a real frailty phase of their lives. And so at that point, when you're measuring things like hormone levels and so on, you don't know whether you're measuring something that they've had for a long time that was conducive to their longevity or is actually associated with a terminal decline and death. Another group that would be good to study that in would be the kids of centenarians, who are doing terrifically well and actively aging very, very well. And certainly measuring IGF, I suppose, and some other, but we are going through such other exciting things right now, that's pretty low on our list.
Other questions or comments? Tapped into a major area of discussion here.
If we got just a second or two, I might comment on this idea that our professional organizations will help us solve this problem. About 15 years ago, I was president of the American Association of Dental Research, and in dental research there's a lot of quackery going on, and I made it my mission to go out and start hammering on it, kind of like you did, and the lawyers come out of the woodwork, boy, they were everywhere. And actually the ADR, American Association of Dental Research, put together a committee to make public policy statements to try to come to grips with this, because we thought, well, the scientists get together, make some public policies on this, and we can get rid of some of this stuff off the table. Well, I tell you, within no more than 2 years, the society was inundated with attorneys, and those withdrew. There's a couple still that are on there, but they scared them so bad they ducked ahead of it. They couldn't put up with the pressure from attorneys. It's tough.
Jay and I and Len Hayflick were editors of a 2-volume series on anti-aging for the Gerontological Society. And the GSA was named, there were 10 John Does in this lawsuit. GSA was one of them, AFAR was one of them. I mean, and people just got scared like crazy. Yeah. But to the credit of the GSA, they stood by us, and it eventually went away.
The thing is, even if you're right, they can tie you up in the court so long that it's just a disaster.
Right.
It can ruin people's lives.
Well, that's what our symposium will be about, unfortunately, in November. But
thanks for your efforts.
Oh no, thanks.
So I'm wondering, does the university have a role in when you're sued for saying something that attracts lawyers? Is the university, do they come to your defense?
Very fortunately, in my case, it was my medical center, and it didn't cost me a penny. In Jay's case, it was the university, and to the credit of the University of Illinois, Chicago. To their credit, they took a much stronger stand in terms of not putting up with this. And I think because they also had huge resources. In my case, they couldn't wait to get out of the suit as quickly as possible. So my settlement happened a little sooner than theirs. In the end, I really wish that I had stood my ground, because at the University of Illinois, some incredibly inflammatory things came out in the deposition stage, but because of the settlement, those were kind of all thrown away. But with an industry like that, I tell you, they got huge things to hide.
And a lot of money to hide it with.
Yeah.
Well, the good news, Randy, is that at least at the Health Science Center, you get the Attorney General of the entire state's office to defend you.
You know, that's exactly what happened with the University of
Yes.
Illinois. They
State.
really took on a huge fish.
I'm not sure
When
that's
you start
comforting,
bringing the
actually.
state behind it.
They're really
But you're right,
energetic.
as long as I say these things with my affiliation, and I say a lot of, in my opinion, and with everything I say, then my hospital is okay. I've learned a lot of lessons since
Yeah.
this all happened.
That in and of itself is a good article.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you.